Hi folks, so in the Mercury shadow period retrograde video that I put out yesterday, I mentioned that this week, rather than do one weekly overview, I'm going to be doing 3 videos. The weekly overview really in some ways constitutes both yesterday's Mercury shadow period video and this video that I'm doing. Because the third video, of course, is going to need to be about the full moon lunar eclipse that we are headed towards this coming Sunday, Monday, March 24th, 25th, depending on where you are. Now, there are, as I mentioned yesterday, 3 primary transits, aspects, so to speak, that we are looking at this week, the week of the 18th of March. And I should say 3 families, one set of these aspects, which I covered yesterday, was Mercury conjuncting the North Node earlier today and Mercury conjuncting Chiron tomorrow. And the fact that Mercury has entered its shadow period, what these aspects related to the transiting Mercury and transiting Chiron and transiting North Node in Aries, what they kind of mean as we look ahead into the upcoming Mercury retrograde period and Mercury coming out of shadow in later on in May. And if you are interested in that information, you should go ahead and check out the video I put out yesterday, which is about the upcoming Mercury retrograde and the fact that Mercury's entered its shadow, and this week has already, as of this morning, I'm Pacific time, and I'm recording this on March the 19th, conjuncted the North Node, and tomorrow conjuncts Chiron. Mercury is going to conjunct Chiron 3 times as part of its retrograde process. The second aspect that is of interest to us this week, which occurs on the 21st of March as far as I'm concerned, and you can Google and see what time it occurs for you wherever you are, is Venus conjuncting Saturn in Pisces. And then finally, the aspect that we're talking about later on after this particular video, when I do the next video, is going to be about the full moon lunar eclipse. Now, as we move towards the lunar eclipse, and considering that we have entered a week before the eclipse and we have entered the Mercury shadow period, we've entered technically what I will call sort of eclipse season, or even more sort of accelerated transformation time. And prior to the video I did yesterday, I did one talking about the importance of entering this period with a view to embracing change and finalizing where it is that you're going to find yourself through various options, hopefully presented to you, and actions that you are taking in the way spirit or the universe responds to them by the beginning of May. We have been, since the middle of February, in a place of knowing that it's time to move forward and knowing that the portals have finally opened to move perhaps in a direction that was near and dear to us, articulated in July, August of last year, or in the second half of last year. But now that we actually have to make decisions and move forward and determine what our future is going to look like, now we've got to contend with all that entails, a firmer and clearer definition of what the next step or the next stage is. You don't have to get wrapped up in any kind of end stage, because there's simply not going to be an end stage. There's just going to be settling on an outcome or a decision by the beginning of May that you can then start to continue to build the rest of this year on until the next set of portal opening, rapid change, discussions, etc. occur. If you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, as I said yesterday, you might be more decisive and might be in a place where you're making those decisions while Mercury is retrograde between April 1st and April 25th of this year. Now, let's talk about Venus conjuncting Saturn. The sign of Pisces and the part of the chart, the house occupied by the sign of Pisces in your chart and what that stands for, as I've mentioned to you, may have experienced certain amount of crisis, loss, dissolution, having to let go of certain things, having to let go of an attachment of how people associated or behaviors associated in that part of the chart needed to be, having to release something that you had to rely on there. And since then, the Pisces part of the chart has never completely settled down or entirely moved past that. Neptune's transit through Pisces has certainly kept that going, and that feeling of loss, but also potentially a feeling of being lied to and deception and gaslighting. And when we deal with those kinds of energies, it's hard then for us not to start to view everything associated with that part of the chart through that lens, so that even if not everything is coming to us through deceptive actions, it's hard for us to be able to see the forest from the trees, or anything with a lot of clarity. It's kind of Neptunian in that regard. Now, Neptune also is a planet that is associated with spiritual renunciation and kind of numinous and artistic inspiration. I'm not talking about epiphanies and intuition of a kind that gives us those aha moments. Those I associate more with Uranus. I'm talking about the muses, that nebulous space from which we get inspiration or ideas, especially when it comes to, with Neptune, there's this association of intoxication, Rumi-esque intoxication, or a kind of checking out of 3D reality that is really ruled and managed for us by Saturn, karmic reality, what it means like to actually live on planet Earth and make money and do rational things and responsible things and things that are responsible to us and not be rash. And Neptune gives us that checkout. So dreams and visions and imagination and escapism. In a real world way, this would mean renouncing material security, pleasures, to follow a much more blissful and surrendered renunciatory path. So with Neptune and Pisces, depending on the house occupied by Pisces, you may have, under some of these influences, wanted to move in a more spiritual direction or wanted to move in a more artistic direction, in which case Neptune plays a more inspiring role. Just really try, and if you're going to make that decision, make it in as grounded a manner as possible so that you're clear about what that means for you. Planets like Neptune and Pluto create loss for us. Pluto creates loss through a kind of undeniable transformation, kind of taking things away from us that are not good from us, removing things that are on our path that are not right for us and not part of our destiny, or may not be really effective for our well-being. Pluto tries to create a transformation, much like Saturn does, in a kind of a more real and immediate way, for our betterment. And now what betterment means to you in terms of what is happening to you and what lens you choose to see things for, I'm gonna leave that up to you. With Pluto, the challenge becomes if Pluto is trying to remove something that we have a real attachment to. And we may even instinctively know that it isn't right for us or on our path, but we may have trouble letting go of it. Then a Pluto transit can be challenging. Challenges habits, challenges behaviors and patterns that have a certain kind of power and control over us, or even people to some extent. With Neptune, loss is, again, with Neptune, the message is very much renunciatory with regard to nothing and nobody is yours, and the things that you may be attached to, or the things that you may be relying on, the behaviors that you're attached to. Neptune may well be Neptune's way of removing things is through creating. Neptune encourages a different kind of surrender. And in Neptune's case, our own boundaries may become loose. We may not always take actions to protect ourselves. We may not know what to protect ourselves from. This fogginess, deceptive, behind the scenes, Seven of Swords, if you're familiar with the Tarot, kind of thievery, gaslighting, lying kind of energy. And even sometimes, if Pisces in your first, second, third house, you may be acting in a Neptunian way towards others as well, and something you may consciously choose to do or may not realize you're doing. Also with Neptune, as I've said, the ways in which we gaslight ourselves. Oh, you're just imagining, oh, this can't be it. Is it this? Is it that? Can I really trust my gut on this? Is this? And what do I do? There's just haze, Talk about rose-colored glasses, whether you are moving towards something highly artistic or sensual or renunciatory, or dealing with material things somehow being taken away from you in very clever ways. Now, whatever's been going on in the Pisces part of the chart, whether it is positive and constructive and desired, heading towards renunciation or heading towards some sort of an artistic path in that part of the chart, or whether it is a feeling of loss or having to release a grip on something, sometimes through deception, as I said. Whatever that theme has been that has been continuing to exercise an energy leak in our lives, with Saturn's entry into Pisces, as I've mentioned to you in a few videos before this, Saturn has demanded that things become clearer and we have established some kind of stability in this part of the chart. Some of the stability to Saturn might be one of consequence and lesson learning. You were not able to take certain actions and put certain boundaries in certain places, and so here is the result of some of that, or here's what is real in the Pisces part of the chart that you get to contend with. And Saturn's lessons are karmic, but Saturn is also asking us now to act in responsible ways in the Pisces part of the chart, to determine what actions we need to take in order to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart. If there are actions that we have needed to take, or situations that we have needed to resolve, or at least put some kind of structure on, some kind of responsibility towards, then Saturn's presence in Pisces is going to encourage us, at times force us, at times push us, accelerate us to get off our butts and draw the lines where they need to be drawn and take the action that needs to be taken to create a stronger foundation, firmer foundation in the Pisces part of the chart. This could be through making things clear, and it's likely that as we headed towards February the 28th, when the Sun, Mercury, and Saturn conjuncted in Pisces, something as we headed through the middle of February, towards the end of February, may have become much clearer to us than it ever was in the Pisces part of the chart. And that creates its own sense of consequence. And with Saturn, there's often a sense of restriction, lessons being learned, something karmic. But Saturn is also asking and begging the question of us. What is our relationship to the Pisces part of the chart such that we can fulfill our highest and fullest potential? And with the things that Neptune has been trying to either inspire us to do or release, are we better off without that? So Saturn's presence, when it comes to things that we're being inspired to do, either spiritual or artistic, might now mean that we start to take planned actions in that direction and put some structure around how we're going to get there, and some responsibility around how we get there, and give up scripts such as, well, I don't really care about this, and I don't, Saturn will say, okay, if you want to go in this direction, what does success look like for you, and what is going to make this successful? And Saturn is not always happy, even when it comes to renunciatory plans. Saturn will say, okay, you want to give up everything and you want to become a monk, but what do you really need? Are you clear? Are you sure about your sense of responsibility towards yourself, so that you're clear about what your baseline is and what it is that you're looking for? If you're looking to release something or an attachment to something in the Pisces part of your chart, if you're looking to follow something artistic, Saturn may say, and Saturn is not going to necessarily easily accept a kind of a, well, I don't care how much money I make, or I don't care what this actually looks like. Saturn is likely going to say, well, let's see how successful we can make this. If you're here and you're present and you're inspired and you want to do this and you have something to offer and you have something to share, then why not do it in a way that is responsible to you and responsible to others? And why not do it in a way that allows you to fulfill your potential and maybe even generate a sense of abundance and stability through it? And so Saturn prompts these questions and encourages you to put together a solid plan and move towards enacting that plan. When it comes to the energies that are harder, gaslightier, more deceptive, Saturn will reveal, and Saturn will really, Saturn's fundamental. It can also be where Neptune has been and where there's been the sense of losses. Crises need. It's a little bit like knowing that our house has a leak somewhere that needs to be addressed. Whether someone has created that leak, whether that leak is destructive, whether we have created that leak through negligence, because Neptune can also encourage a kind of negligence on our part. Oh, this will work. So it was not going to be that bad. It's going to be, we'll figure this out. Saturn is like, no. Enough in the Pisces part of the chart. If you're creating something, get off the pot or I'm not going to go into that metaphor, time to make something happen. Or if you are having to fix a leak, whether it is by your doing or someone else's doing or a combination thereof through Neptunian influences, we're going to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart because you have got to move. And at this point in time, especially through the eclipses, take advantage of the expansive energies, the heart's desire energies, the new beginnings that are being created and the individuality that is being created in the Aries and Taurus part of our charts right now. Now, later on this year, in the second half of this year, as the North Node eclipses start that transition into Pisces, we may need to put our attention to the Pisces part of the chart to grow something there or look for something there. But we're not there at present. What is interesting about, at around this time every year, typically starting the middle of February, but every year it's a little bit different. The sun, February 18th, 19th, 20th to March 21st, 22nd. The moon, of course, creating a new moon when it meets up with the sun, and we're currently in the month of Pisces, in the new moon month of Pisces, the 28 days following the new moon in Pisces. So at least some of our energy is going to continue to go there and see developments there, and us looking to, again, stabilize that part of the chart based on everything that we have known and seen. And if you're interested, actually, the video I would refer you to is the new moon in Pisces video that I did that will expand on some of these energies even more and more clearly. So I'll put a link to that at the end of this, if that is of interest. But the bottom line is Venus, Mars getting ready to enter Pisces on the 22nd of March. So soon enough, in 3 days' time, the day after Venus conjuncts Saturn. This year, all these planets, and it's not as if they didn't last year to some extent, but Saturn was only just entering Pisces last year. But this year, these conjunctions are a little bit more serious and a little more grounded. All these planets have either conjuncted or will be conjuncting Saturn and Neptune. And the conjunctions that are left now are Venus conjuncting Saturn, and then Neptune on April the 3rd, I believe. And then Mars coming in and conjuncting Saturn on the 10th of March, and then Neptune, the 10th of April. And then let me give you the real dates. How's that? Venus conjuncts Saturn, of course, on March the 21st, conjuncts Neptune on April the 3rd. Mars conjuncts Saturn April the 10th. Mars conjuncts Neptune April 29th. So during eclipse season and Mercury retrograde, a lot of what is playing out, which is playing out on the Aries-Libra axis, we can't ignore the Pisces part of the chart that is longing for structure and repair. Depending on, you can use those words structure, you can use the words structure and responsibility, whether you're trying to construct something in the Pisces part of the chart or stabilize something, or manage something, or be done with something, or if someone is continuing to act in a Neptunian way towards you and continue to be gaslighting, develop your own relationship with where your boundaries with that are going to be. Saturn continues to create this stabilizing influence in the Pisces part of the chart, and I suggest with Saturn Saturn is one of those planets where it is going to extend a hand out to you and it's going to ask you to take that hand and shake it, or else Saturn will force you in different way. When Saturn is in a certain part of the chart and working with us to create a strong foundation in that part of the chart, it is proverbially like that strict teacher that, kind of makes you do something 3 or 4 or 5 times until you get it, and makes you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning if you're an athlete and run around the field, and, strengthens you, does not do things for you, makes you do them until you figure out who you are and what your self-sabotaging behaviors are. And as a result of that, makes you win if you partner with Saturn through that. Saturn is kind of our high performance coach. It's really not there to coddle us through the process, but it is there to, we're the ones who are going to be doing. We're the ones who are going to have to be in action to stabilize this part of the chart. And Saturn is here till January 2026. And after January 2026, shortly thereafter, Saturn takes Neptune by the hand, marches it into Aries, where they have a conjunction. So this iconography, so to speak, the symbolism of Saturn stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart and ushering Neptune out of it, we can't completely ignore. Venus is the planet of relationships and money. Venus is the planet of what we value and our values. And it's the word value that is the most critically important. If we think of Venus and her counterpart Mars, Venus is what we are creating and what we value, and Mars is what hunts and gathers to help nurture what Venus is creating and protecting, and also draws boundaries when conflict or competition come up so that what we value is protected. Mars provides protection, stability through yang actions, and Venus nurtures and grows what we value. Venus, for me, is a planet of natural flow. She can be associated with passivity, but this natural flow is astonishingly powerful. How many of us have seen blades of grass coming through pavement? This wisdom, this innate knowing, this set of cosmic actions that flows outside of our mental capacity and our action and our engineering and feels unstoppable. If anyone has ever adopted kittens, and they're so tiny and they're so fragile, and you wonder whether they're going to make it, and how tenacious is life, how tenacious is this flow. But it flows at its own pace. It has its own sense of rightness. It will not be hurried, but it will grow, and it will strengthen its roots, and it will take hold. And with Venus, when it comes to money and relationships, there is this question of being in balance and being in harmony and not being too, it is in Mars's jurisdiction to be assertive and aggressive and impatient and rushing things. And Mars is essentially archetypally trying to do that to protect Venus and what she is nurturing. And we have both these sides to us. When it comes to Venus, there's a sense of harmony, flow, politeness, decency, cordiality. If you're going to communicate under Venus's influence, and even if you have to disagree, which she will be perfectly fine with you doing, it is done with decency. It is the velvet glove. It is the scales. At the end of the day, Venus rules Taurus, the greenest of signs, and the sign associated with our resources of all kinds, and arguably the slowest of signs when it comes to pace and pacing, and Libra, the most harmony-loving, peace-loving, balance-loving of signs. disturbed when things are not cordial, sometimes to a fault, sometimes polite to the point of fakeness, right? That's when Venus goes into patterns and behaviors that all planets and all archetypes have their shadow side as well. So with Venus, some of those could be laziness, hedonism of a certain type, gluttony, holding on to things, miserliness sometimes, laziness, passivity, sweetness that is not genuine. But wherever Venus goes and wherever Venus transits, as I've said to you before, I look forward to Venus's transit in a part of the chart because Venus is the planet that comes in and provides opportunities, financial, relationships. She sprinkles whichever part of the chart she's in with blessings and assistance. Venus's transit through Pisces is also known for the fact that Venus is exalted in Pisces. Venus has a great love and comfort in the Pisces sign. Understandably, Pisces is about flow and result and letting go and dreaming and togetherness and connectedness. Very Venusian. Pisces is not an aggressive sign. Venus's transit through Pisces in the Pisces part of the chart, the house occupied by Pisces this year, is a little bit, and next year in 2025, is a little bit more complicated. Because in her transit, she is going to be meeting up with Saturn in a couple of days' time, and then ultimately Neptune. When we've had the Sun and Mercury conjunct Saturn, and they gave us a reality check in the sign of Pisces with regard to what was going on and what it is that we needed to know, and when the Sun and Mercury conjuncted Neptune earlier in this process, it was almost a kind of a deja vu of certain things coming up over the past couple of weeks that made us go, here it is again. Am I going crazy? Is someone doing something? What is my relationship to it? Put us in observation mode again with regard to things coming back again that we have been associating with Neptunian behavior in the Pisces part of the chart. With Mercury, it could have been something to do with communication. With the Sun, it was a kind of illumination awareness. But of course, because Neptune is involved, we're still lost in this place of, am I just imagining this? Or am I wrong about it? Or is this actually happening? Or is it not happening at all, but there's something else that's happening that's making me feel like this is also happening? Venus conjuncting Saturn can have various implications. Venus is also a planet associated with the arts and creativity. Venus conjuncting Saturn in the Pisces part of the chart, in the house occupied by Pisces, can mean that for those of you who've been using the Neptunian transit in Pisces to move in a more artistic or creative direction, Venus conjunction in Saturn provides an opportunity to create or construct something very, very financial planning, relationship planning, planning something concrete with regard to how you're going to make a project successful related to creativity, related to finances and resources. Venus's entry into the Pisces part of the chart could have offered a blessing, maybe a financial blessing, a relationship blessing in the Pisces part of the chart, and as it got ready to conjunct Saturn, could have created an expense that takes that blessing and uses it for something else. The biggest thing that Venus conjunct Saturn points to is responsibility. Responsibility with resources. Where do you want to go? What do you value? What are you building that is valuable? How are you going to husband and manage your resources? What is the right amount to spend on what? What is the best way to manage? Venus conjunct Saturn is all about becoming very present to any reckless behavior, when it comes to finances and resources. That does not mean necessarily that finances cannot be spent on or towards something you are trying to construct. But it does mean, especially if you've dealt with a recent expense over the past 4 or 5 days, it does mean really thinking about it and thinking through what is your relationship to managing resources and expenditures when it comes to not only our overall goals, which are important to consider, but also the Pisces part of the chart. You may, during Venus's transit through the Pisces part of the chart, which continues till April the 5th, be blessed with financial gifts or relationship gifts or a certain amount of harmony or a sense of partnership if you're trying to work something out with someone, if you're trying to get to some sort of a resolution with someone. Till April the 5th, you have that opportunity. But it's muddy waters. A little bit clearer and still constructive and instructive with Venus's conjunction to Saturn, but more troubling when we deal with Venus conjuncting Neptune on April the 3rd, shortly after Mercury goes retrograde. There, I would really watch my wallet. Now, again, if you are planning to do something artistic or creative, Venus conjunct Neptune, or even something romantic, I mean, it's sort of an off-the-charts kind of inspiration and magic and sensuality. But again, there's a dissolution of boundaries, and dissolution of boundaries, again, can mean a relinquishing control, which can lead to a certain kind of loss of either self or loss of money. So there's a need to, as we go through this time period till the end of April, go through the eclipse season, go through Mercury retrograde direct, and we go through our acceleration of change that is going to try and give us a sense of where we're going to find ourselves by early May in a way that is more settled than it feels right now, in a way that we're able to decide and see in partnership with Spirit and the changes that Spirit brings and the opportunities that Spirit brings and what actually comes through and what doesn't come through, us getting to May and going, you know what? I know that this is what I thought I wanted in the direction I wanted to move in the second half of 2023 and wasn't able to. Now I can. And this is what I want it to look like, or I don't want to move in that direction anymore, or I'm still moving forward. There's a more committed, if you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, you might reach that commitment between April 1st and 25th. If you have Mercury direct, you will reach that by early May. And if you decide that you're going to move in a certain direction, that direction might accelerate as you head towards June the 8th. Because for people who have Mercury direct in their birth chart, the April 8th eclipse occurs while Mercury is retrograde, which will slow down that Aries month till the Taurus new moon to some extent. We're still going to be waiting in April. But we are also going to be, the universe is also going to have us by the tail, and it's going to be swinging us around its head a little bit to kind of accelerate and move things around so that we're in a clearer place by the beginning of May. As we go through this period and we see this Venus-Saturn conjunction occurring, there is a need for us to put our hands on the steering wheel with an understanding that often over the next 6 weeks, God will take the wheel. And we will do the eclipsy thing of, I don't know where this is going. I can feel the imminence of the change. I don't know. Where is this headed? Remember, when you start to feel that way, the strategies show up for every opportunity. Bang your head. Well, not literally. But try to show up for every opportunity and go through every door that you can. If there's 2 presented to you, or 13 presented to you, or 25 presented to you, the one meant for you through the eclipses, as I've mentioned to you, you barely place your hand on the knob, it'll open and it will pull you in. We've had that happen so many times by now, right? Those jobs that we that we get, those meetings, those locations, those apartments, those things, they have a sense of, sometimes you enter these spaces and you're like, I know this is it and nothing is going to be able to take this away from me. I know I'm meant to be here for some reason. It's always, ultimately a mixed bag. There are lessons that are learned and things that are gotten and blah, blah, blah. And then there's a time to leave. And then the eclipses come and they pull the carpet rug from under our feet and it's time to leave. So the question is, will you stay or where will you go? Where will you go? What will it look like? And we're in the process of figuring that out. And just as that process is getting started, Venus comes in conjunct Saturn and says, watch your purse. Watch how you relate with others. That's the two things. Well, so many people put love with Venus in the romantic sense, and I really associate certainly a certain type of passion and crushiness with Mars. It's a much more yang, testosterone-filled energy. With Venus, you need both in us. With Venus, the sense of connection and support is I associate desire with Mars. And I associate what we value and what is valuable with Venus. And when it comes to romantic relationships that are going to have longevity, both of those count. And since we're talking about Venus conjuncting Saturn, one of the things we have to be present to, things may have come up recently where we have committed to something or committed to doing something that may require a financial investment or relationship investment. And what Saturn is saying is, hey, this direction you're moving in requires a sense of responsibility to yourself and to others and to the project and to everything that you're thinking. Is this what you want? Will this lead to your highest potential? Is this the right direction? It may have longevity to it. It may have a sense of commitment to it. Venus conjunct Saturn, expenditures need to be watched, may happen. Venus conjunct Saturn, prudence, responsibility, money, relationships. Remember what I've said to you before, and others have said it in different ways. The quality of our abundance is dependent upon the quality of our relationships and what commitments we make. There are certain, Mercury is a planet that's associated with contracts and writing and the written word. Saturn is a planet that's associated with contracts. And with Venus conjuncting Saturn, how are we tying up our money? How are we tying up our relationship? What are we committing to? Again, with Saturn, there's this tone of, is this what you want? Are you serious about this? Are we getting ready to go? Then let's build a strong foundation. But remember, with Saturn, there's a nose to the grindstone quality. There's a sense of leadership towards yourself and others. There's a sense of watchfulness. It's not Venus conjunct Jupiter or Mercury conjunct Jupiter, which is basically saying, oh great, an auspicious, expansive new beginning. But Jupiter, apart from creating that new beginning, which feels auspicious and has a sense of rightness to it, doesn't really support you through the process in the way that Saturn does. Because Saturn will stay with you and keep working with you and working with you and working with you, even if it doesn't feel like it's working with you or for you, until you figure out what it's going to take to make that successful. So when it comes to responsibility, fiscal responsibility, responsibility towards our relationships, responsibility towards ourselves, responsibility towards the projects that we're committing to, responsibility towards any contracts we're committing to, relationships and money, structuring financial ventures, relationship ventures, artistic ventures, spiritual ventures, giving them a strong foundation. Under Saturn's transit, when Saturn transits the first house, I have often seen a client get that constructive opportunity, job opportunity, that's going to make them, that's going that is going to provide a strong foundation for them. And it's funny, you would associate that with a Jupiter transit. Jupiter provides expansive breaks. If we are trying to put something into, if we're trying to build something, we need Jupiter to create the break and to light the spark. And then we need Saturn to help us lay a strong foundation. And it may have a nose to the grindstone quality. It may be that the opportunities and the wins for a certain period of time are small, but they allow us to focus on our mastery. So when it comes to responsibility at this point in time, as we head towards March the 21st, the overall message is, as we remember for everybody to some extent, Mercury retrograde will reveal to us what is in our blind spot. So it really isn't entirely all systems go with complete clarity until early May, accelerating in early June. If you have Mercury retrograde, it may happen in April. It may be that the clarity comes and you're just like, okay, this is what I know, and this is what I found out, and this is where we're going, and this is what we're doing. For other people, we're going to get through the Mercury retrograde with a sense of, oh, now I understand this, or now I know this, and I'm still having trouble completely accepting what I have just learned, but I have to factor it in. And based on what we factor in, we then realize and recognize which direction we're really headed in. So Venus conjunct Saturn says, hey, we're starting that. We are, even though the process of acceleration, even though the spin cycle is between now and the end of April, for a lot of us, the clarity that the spin cycle, the clean clothes, the clean vision is going to come to us in early May as a result of going through this eclipse, rug under the feet, universe helping us accelerate, providing opportunities, closing down opportunities, trying to let us know which door is really the one we're going to walk through, helping us through that process of co-creating with us to some extent. What Venus conjunct Saturn is saying at the very beginning of this, your hands, steering wheel, responsible navigation of your resources and your relationships and your commitments. And a sense of truth to yourself through this process of what you value and what is valuable to you. What are you building and why are you building it? And what do you need in order to build it effectively? So then don't be rash and just go and commit to something that isn't completely thought out, or spend your money in a certain direction that isn't completely, or just kind of, there might be a better deal. There might be a more responsible way to do the same thing. And if you are exploring something and committing to something, are you completely clear and sure? Because it is that much easier and that much more fun to work with Saturn when you're building something that is in your heart. When you're building something that you want to build. Then working with Saturn, putting a nose through the grindstone, even through all those moments that Saturn exposes. Deadlines, procrastination, a lack of self-confidence, coming face to face with a sense of self-belief. All of that is that much more fun and richer when we're building something that we want. Venus conjunct Saturn, responsibility, and a sense of responsibility towards understanding what we want and how we're going to husband and manage our resources and build a strong financial future and manage our relationships and build a strong financial future around it. When it comes to the gaslighting, thievery, loss question in the Pisces part of the chart, Venus conjunct Saturn can create a sense of being awake and present. It's almost as if we got some clarity by February 28th, and then Mercury conjuncting Neptune and the Sun conjuncting Neptune. Mercury conjuncted Neptune on March the 8th, the Sun on March the 17th, which is just 2 days ago. And a kind of an awareness, a discomfort of, this is what it feels like, to be sort of in meeting up with Neptune. Venus conjuncting Saturn right after that might make it feel a little bit like, are my pockets being picked? Or it could even be that somewhere the Saturn conjunctions are really helpful in Pisces through this process. It might just be that Venus conjunct Saturn is saying, easy does it, and take responsible actions. How are you going to find a way to work with this situation and implement what you need to implement to safeguard your resources and what is valuable to you? What are you going to let go of? What are you not? What is your plan to build a strong foundation and to protect what is valuable to you through everything that has been going on in the Pisces part of the chart since 2014, 15, 16? Where do you want to go? And if it means that boundaries have to be laid, or don't ignore the fact that Venus through April the 5th is there to try and help us smooth through certain relationship issues and put certain things in place. It may not be a bad time to have those conversations in those areas where we're trying to manage something and see what comes up. By the time Mars comes into Pisces after the 22nd, but especially as it starts in April it is a very different energy in the sign of Pisces. One of the possible interpretations and one of the challenges with this Venus transit is that Mercury-Sun conjunction on February 28th showed us something that we've been, with a certain amount of clarity, that we have been wondering about or guessing about. And then these conjunctions to Neptune have given us a sense of, but I don't think all the deceptive behavior is completely stopped. Venus's transit and connection with Saturn and Neptune may mean that if we've been fearing a certain type of loss, financial loss, relationship loss, deception, it still occurs in March. But as we get through the eclipses and as we get to April, when Mars comes in, we may feel like, you know what, enough is enough. With Mars going through Pisces, conjuncting Saturn and then Neptune, if you're building something spiritual and artistic, it's construction time, it's action time, it's doing time. It's curious and interesting to me that this happens while Mercury is retrograde, but it is what it is. There's a reason to take action to stabilize. Venus's transit through Pisces still has an element of cordiality and passivity. And as I said, there might be gifts. There might be a financial blessing. There might be an opportunity. There might be a relationship opportunity. There might be the opportunity to build certain bridges. There could be, if someone is trying something to create loss for you again, a loss that follows a similar pattern and may not be felt quite so intensely as it was before. But there's something then about heading into April with Mars coming in that makes us feel like lines have to be drawn. If you're not using Mars's energy to build something constructive in the Pisces part of the chart, you'll be using it to draw boundaries. And Mars conjuncting Saturn is taking action for the long term, either building something. Talk about a construction. One of the things with I'm going to leave you with this. One of the things with conjunctions that we have to consider is, what is the conversation that both planets in this house occupied by the sign of Pisces would be having with each other? What would Venus and Saturn be saying to each other when they meet up? Saturn would be saying, here's what I'm expecting of you. And Venus would be saying, here's what I need from you. Saturn would be saying, here's what we need to do in order to stabilize this part of the chart. Venus would be saying, here's what is valuable. How do we create it? How do we protect it? I actually don't want to overinterpret the Venus-Saturn conversation. I want you, based on what you know and understand, the Pisces. That is really an exercise for each of us to do individually. For some of us, it's even a reckoning and a realization of what relationships. It is a reality check with regard to what is really important to us, both financially and relationship-wise in the Pisces part of the chart. A conversation that we have not been able to have until Saturn's entry into Pisces that will allow us to define what we value in the Pisces part of the chart, so that we know when Mars comes in what we are going to fight for, because that is the relationship between Venus and Mars. Venus, what we value and what our values are, and Mars, I will protect that, and I will fight for it, and I will make things happen for it constructively as well, and I will pursue goals to nurture and protect what you value. So Venus's conjunction with Saturn can very much be a conversation about what is important to us in the Pisces part of the chart, and what are we going to protect. I will leave you with that, and I will leave you with the importance of this conjunction happening when it is happening, with a sense of navigating the next 6 weeks, with a sense of being open to change and possibility, and the clarity that eclipses and Mercury retrograde provide by swirling us through a certain amount of lack of clarity and spitting us out at the end of the process by early May, for those of us who have Mercury direct in our birth chart. By approaching it with a sense of excitement, with a sense of recognizing that we need this acceleration that we're entering into, but also with a sense of responsibility towards our resources and relationships as we enter this period, so that we keep a line of sight towards what we value. Venus conjuncting Saturn is very much a, what do you really want? And are you in alignment with it? And when it comes to making financial decisions or relationship decisions, I mean, Venus conjunct Saturn, some people could argue, could be a very favorable, this is very Western astrology, contemporary Western, I take it with a grain of salt, but it could be considered very favorable for a long-term relationship. But I think that what is needed, or a long-term financial commitment that could be stable and fruitful in the long term with a strong foundation. But I do think that in order for that to happen, that responsible decisions need to be made, and there needs to be clarity around what it is that we're trying to build and why. You have to build a strong foundation on a strong foundation. If you're going to make a house, if you're going to lay the foundation for a structure, the foundation for the structure can't be laid in a city or a town or a plot of land or something that you have no passion for, that you have no commitment to. And Venus conjunct Saturn is an aspect of commitment, and how you're going to manage resources and relationships around that. Who you're going to commit to, what you're going to commit to it, how are you going to navigate yourself? In some ways, it's lovely to have this grounded reality check, hand on the steering wheel, watch your purse, you're in it for the long haul. Who are you committing to? Why are you committing to it? Do your responsibility check towards yourself and everything that you're moving forward and doing. Be clear about what you want and what you value. Be clear about what you want to protect in the Pisces part of the chart as we continue to move forward. The Mercury conjunctions, of course, are in a more expansive part of the chart. As I said, the pull and the expansion, the Aries and Taurus part of the chart, the Pisces part of the chart saying, you got to manage me, or else whatever you've been ignoring or whatever else has been leaking is going to threaten to just flood over and create problems and obstacles for the direction that you need to go in. I will leave it at that. If you found this useful, you can like or comment on the video. If you're interested in getting a personal reading from me, please go ahead and email me at the email address in the description area below. I can provide you with the relevant information. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already. Click on the bell icon next to the subscribe button. The wiggly bell on top will notify you whenever I'm doing new videos, and I will leave it at that until the full moon lunar eclipse video. Thank you.